Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into real cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell.
I'm Megan.
I'm Jason.
Jason!
Yay.
It's so nice
Back
to
by
have
popular
you.
demand.
And
Right.
I'm back finally.
Finally, Megan in her month-long vacationing. it
2
felt
weeks.
like.
And I love, because you know I'm a fan. So
Yes.
I listen and I'm looking at stuff and I'm like, Megan, who's not here with us, physically, not spiritually. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Charnell, stop trying to kill me up. Jason?
Tell us how many miles you walked again.
Over 70. I walked over 10 miles a
She
day.
was on a
I
pilgrimage.
clocked
Right.
between 70 and 80 miles. I basically hiked from Miami to Atlanta.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
way over 80
It's a lot
miles.
more.
I know.
But it's a bit more.
I went to Disney, you guys. Everybody knows that's not a relaxing vacation, but my youngest child needed to go, so
It's
I
not
took
the
her.
happiest
Can
place
we
on
rub the green?
We have another thank you, though, to bring out.
Yeah.
So Natalie, dear Patreon Natalie, sent us a Tree of Life. And if you are not familiar with the Tree of Life, it's a spiritual meaning, the tree that connects us all. There's a whole, when I start my spiritual podcast coming very soon in 2025, I will teach you all about it. But this one has all the chakras on it. So as I was pulling it, I was teaching Megan and Jason about the chakras.
And I made her stop.
And
'cause
she,
I
yeah,
said,
she's like, you should stop and you should tell everybody about these. So these red ones right here at the bottom, this is our root chakra. Okay. And then we have the sacral chakra. Jason will be particularly interested in this one. This is where our sexuality comes from.
yeah, because your
Our
sacrum is your tailbone.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then we have our solar plexus.
I didn't mean to pet my ass in front of you. I
Well-
was finding it.
And
She was finding that
yeah,
chakra.
right.
That's all. Yes.
which is weird that it's your tailbone.
Your sacrum,
Well, it's not.
sacroiliac joint
What-
is down there.
What your chakra is Sanskrit for wheel, and it is about energy centers in our body.
So it's
Yeah,
not just
no,
the ass.
I'm familiar with chakras.
And they're
I just
most-
didn't know your sexuality chakra was in your.
Well, it's
the area of your sacrum.
near your
and
asshole.
and it's where your reproductive
Isn't that where your reproductive organ is
organs are
near?
at.
I mean,
He's
It like, it's is.
closer to
It's it's-
most mornings.
right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're talking the internal, not
Yes.
necessarily the external.
Your man ovaries.
Yes.
Closer to there.
Yes, and we have
Huevos.
then there's the heart chakra.
It's green.
Yes, heart chakras are green. Your throat chakra is primarily, though, with the color a light blue. On this tree, they have it as more of a white crystal. That's
like it.
fine too. And they have the third eye chakra is the deeper blue, which is accurate. And then your crown chakra. This is where the knowledge comes from at the very top. This
I'm
deep
so
purple.
impressed, which is the color of royalty and knowledge.
Yes,
Where do you think I
knowledge.
could find one of these?
Oh, everywhere. They have them on Amazon.
Do they?
have, yes.
Okay.
You want one?
No, but my sister's birthday's Friday, and
Oh,
I think
she
she
would
needs
love
that.
this.
Like she has to
She
have that.
Would love the Tree of Life. I have one on my desk now. Natalie has gifted us one for the podcast studio, which I'm so grateful for.
I want to get one for Olivia too. Wouldn't that make a great wedding gift for her?
Yes, it would. But you spread it all out, and it's just a reminder of the way that we are all connected with each other, with nature, with the universe, with all that is. And you can actually open up your chakras by focusing on different parts of the Tree of Life
You
as
keep
well.
your sacral chakra closed for
Yeah,
the rest of
can
this
just
episode, Jason.
turn that-
Yes. Turn your
Turn
sacral
that one
chakra down, please, while
Bunch
we're
it up
here.
together.
Where we're going to primarily be is in the solar plexus, which is like more of the top of your belly. This is where you feel like in your solar plexus when something just
gut.
really feels wrong
At your gut.
and off. But that's also where associated a lot with like who we are, who we present ourselves to the world. So this is how we connect with our our friends, our friendships, and the information that we take back to ourselves.
Oh my God, it makes sense that you would tell somebody I hate your guts.
Right? I
Absolutely.
wonder if that's where that comes from.
It is. It has to be. I'm so smart.
Could be. It absolutely could
You
be.
missed me the past 2 weeks,
Is
didn't you?
there any? Yeah, I did actually. Is there any correlation with that? Like, because sometimes that's where I get cramps when I put on my socks.
That, my friend,
You
you need
zero
more.
flexibility.
You need
man.
more yoga, honey.
and you
That's
Just
why.
need more water intake.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You
Water,
don't bend.
yoga.
I'm not bendy at all.
You're-
My feet are really far away from me.
You're the least flexible person I think that I know.
Socks are my nemesis
I'm
right
old,
now.
and I could take my foot right now, bend my whole leg up, and like smell my toes.
Yes.
Hot.
As
I know.
it's the sexiest thing she's ever said to us, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, so thank you all for, sorry, I know some people really hate banter. Megan is currently pointing at our mimosas that we're having, well, that you guys had,
Mine's
that I'm currently
gone.
still
It's
having.
like going, sure,
Yes.
and then going, and then gone.
Gone for
Well,
Jason.
there's a direct correlation between the level of our glass and who's talking the most.
Absolutely.
I gave him the big glass, though.
Yeah. He's also got the big gullet.
It's fatter than ours.
When you said that, I thought you were nuts, but I didn't realize the glass is actually bigger.
Yes.
Because there was less in it. It looked like, I'm like, whatever.
No.
I'm like, why don't you give me the one with less
No,
in it? I
you
didn't
had
know
the more.
Because you
you
I
had
didn't
more
even notice.
circumference.
I did not notice that
Yours
mine was
is thick.
thicker.
You were making up for it in width.
I didn't even notice.
We
Oh.
better move on to the episode.
We
General
do.
public, please, at the very beginning of this, we should tell them you might want to fast forward
Yeah, if you don't like
9 minutes.
9 minutes of us talking. Yeah, sorry about that. We don't usually do that here. So if you're new here, this isn't typical for our episodes. We just had some housekeeping and some thanking to do to people. So, all right, now we'll move on. This is, for those of you that have been with us, you realize, you guys, today is January 20th. So in just 2 weeks, we will be celebrating our 4-year anniversary here on Crime Curious.
Whoop, whoop.
So
Only 4.
I
Yeah.
know it's 4.
Feels longer.
It
Does
does
feel longer,
kind of
doesn't it?
feel longer. It's a little bit like a marriage, you know? Feels longer than it really is.
Wait till you're 7 and one of us will skip out.
Oh my God. I am
No,
going to
we're
lose
not.
one of you at 7 years.
No, we're just going to experiment with somebody else and end up back with you ultimately.
Wow.
That's probably what will happen. Shit. Oh, you'll be thinking of me the whole time, I'm sure.
Always.
So this is a redo of one of our very first episodes. You know, I've said that we are redoing things slowly but surely to have Megan's perspective and Jason's as well when he cares to join us. And
So rude.
Which makes it sound like you're twisting my arm to be here.
for free labor,
general-
you guys really are great.
I'm that busy.
The general audience isn't used to having you around, though.
I've literally told you no like once.
I know.
Yeah,
and
but
I
it
love
hurt.
that about you.
It hurt really bad.
Cried for 2 days, but
Right.
I still
Still.
love that you rarely tell me no. Thank you.
Bothers me in my sacrum.
No, not your sacrum.
Your gut.
Solar
My
plexus.
solar
Solar
plexus.
plexus.
It bothers me in my solar plexus.
Those are tacos you had.
On the new podcast, I think I'm going to need to have you on when we talk about chakras so you can learn appropriately.
Because, you know, I'm like, of the three of us, probably, I'm spiritual, but I'm the least spiritual. I can admit this.
Yeah.
Of the three of us.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I'm always
certainly.
there to be the devil's advocate.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not what we're talking about today, though. We're going to talk about the murder of Nana and Pop Pop.
I remember kind of this episode.
Pop
I'm a
Pop.
fan. I've listened to every general
Yes.
audience episode.
Ugh, Pop Pop. This is just a heartbreaking one. But, Megan, I really wanted to redo it because we're talking about a juvenile committing a very serious crime in this case. And you have a soft spot from your experience with the juvenile court. And so I think you could offer, when it comes time to talking about sentencing and things like that, I think you can offer some insight here. And Jason, you're just the show pony.
Got it.
Okay.
Not that he has an entire job that related to investigating issues with children. I mean, let's just.
I know.
I've only spent 25 years working with kids. It's fine.
It's kind of like Jason also testified today.
Yeah.
And Jason was there.
And Jason was there.
Okay.
Pretty much what the last time I testified was.
I
Like,
know,
oh,
I was
what's your
quoting
name?
the judge.
Jason. She's like, all right, well, bye. Thanks. Okay.
Appreciate it. All right. Christopher Frank Pittman was born April 9th, 1989 in Huntsville, Alabama, to Joe Pittman Jr. and Hazel Pittman. Now, Christopher is our perpetrator in this case, okay, just to tie everything together. According to an article on ChristopherPittman.org, Christopher's parents were very young. They met in 1986 in Wildwood High School. His father was a sophomore and his mother was a freshman when they had his older sister, Danielle, the next year.
Okay, she was the teen mom.
Yes. So she would have been
Young
a
one.
sophomore. Their dad would have been a junior, very young. So Hazel, that's Christopher's mom, she was 16 when she had Danielle. So Dad, Joe, joined the Army and they moved to Alabama in 1988 when Christopher came in 1989, the following year. It was only 6 weeks after having Christopher that Hazel decided that she couldn't take it anymore and she left. Unfortunately, Joe was away in the military, so she left baby Christopher and Danielle in the care of her own mother, Delnora Dupree. She goes by Del. So
Okay.
Grandma Del, all right,
Love it.
is with Christopher and Danielle while Dad is away in the military. By October of the following year, after abandoning Christopher and Danielle, Hazel had another child with a different father, one that Del actually would later adopt and raise. So we're kind of familiar with these type of family dynamics. In 1991, Joe Jr., so this is Christopher and Danielle's dad, he returned from Desert Storm and he moved back to Alabama where he was stationed with his children. Then, December 1991, when he was discharged from the Army, they moved into Joe and Joy Pittman's home in Oxford, Florida. So Joe and Joy Pittman are Nana and Pop Pop.
They're Nana and Pop Pop.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep. So Nana and Pop Pop, they move in with them. And just so you guys are clear, Joe Pittman Sr. is the grandfather and Joe Pittman Jr. is Christopher's father. So I know I've said a lot of names, so I'm trying to help people kind of connect it. In 1992, Joe Jr., so Christopher's dad, remarried, but then separated only a year later. So they moved out of the Pittman's home when their dad remarried, and then just a year later end up moving back into Nana and Pop Pop's home. So there's some instability going on here, obviously, at a very young age.
And are they moving in? I just need clarity. Are they moving into Nana and Pop Pop's home without one of the parents?
With Joe.
It's
At this point in time, it is with Dad. Hazel is still out of the picture.
Okay.
Christopher and his Pop Pop had an especially close relationship. They would hunt, they would fish, they would tinker with things by taking them apart and putting them back together. And then Nana, Joy, did all the motherly things like cook, she did the laundry, drove the kids to school, that kind of thing. Very typical for 1992 household dynamics. The kids and Joe Jr. did eventually get a place of their own. So this is, the kids and their dad, but it was only a few miles away. So the kids would still see Nana and Pop Pop daily, especially since Nana and Pop Pop helped with the caretaking of the children for Joe. And then by 1996, Joe Jr. remarries again, and this marriage comes with 2 daughters. So he gained 2 stepdaughters, and the children gained 2 stepsisters. This was a hard transition for Christopher to make. And remember, he had not seen his own mother really ever in his life because she left very early on after Christopher was born. And now Dad is on his 3rd marriage.
Right. He hasn't had a stable female figure in his life ever.
No, besides Nana, who they kind of keep moving in and out of home, right? And there was Del, there was Hazel's mom, Grandma Del, that was there occasionally. I mean, they lived with her for a time being. In 1997, so Christopher is 8 at this time, Danielle is 10. Nana and Pop Pop build their retirement home in Chester, South Carolina, which was 500 miles away from Oxford, where they had been with them. And so Nana and Pop Pop move away, but they did still see the children regularly, and they were still a large part of their life. Them moving away was extremely difficult for Christopher. He had already suffered so much turmoil and change and instability. So that was 1997. Now we're going to jump forward to 2001.
Okay.
Joe Pittman, Dad, Joe Pittman Jr., is now divorcing his 3rd wife. And suddenly, and remember, he was in Desert Storm. He did have diagnosed PTSD. I'm sure that those things were difficult.
Oh, yeah. Definitely hard to hold on a relationship for some people.
Oh, and especially in this time in history. I mean, when really getting help and giving veterans help was not as much of a priority. So all of a sudden, Mama Hazel, Christopher and Danielle's mom,
Comes out of the woodwork.
she does. She arrives in Florida for a 2-week vacation to visit her mother, Dell, shortly after giving birth to her 7th child.
Holy shit.
Yeah, she'd been busy.
Where are all of these children?
Not all of them. Well, Dell had raised and adopted the 3rd child that she had after Christopher. You know, there was Danielle, Christopher, then this 3rd child. I am unsure.
Where
I
4,
know-
5, and 6 were?
Yeah, 4, 5, and 6 are still in her custody.
Okay.
Okay, but I don't know that they stay that way.
That's what I was going to ask
but-
Jason, is wondered if like some of them were in foster care and then does she move? Like her visit to Florida?
She sounds
yeah. Like clients.
a little
Well,
sketch.
The 2-week vacation to visit Grandma Dell does last much longer because Joe Jr. and Hazel start to make sexy eyes at each other again. So
God.
finally, after all this time, it would appear that Christopher and Danielle are going to have their real mother in their life. Christopher, really, for the first time ever, and Danielle, since she was like, I don't know, 3. Okay. Hazel rented a mobile home, and she had her 4 other children with her in her care. She told Joe Jr. that she was separated from her husband. She got to know Christopher and Danielle. Her and Danielle shared clothes. She met their friends, all of that crap, right? She's acclimating into their life. By October of 2001, Joe Jr. and the kids arrived at Hazel's trailer, and she was telling them to take their items that they had left because she wasn't going to see them anymore. It seems that her husband was threatening to take custody of the 4 children that she had in her care, and she told them that she was not going to lose her kids over them.
Her other kids.
You know, her
my
freaking
kids.
other
I'm not
kids.
going to lose my kids over my kids.
No?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm not going to lose my husband over my husband.
Got to make room on the shelf for her Mom of the Year awards.
Oh, yes. It's a tiny shelf. Yeah, I think.
Well, the trailer was small.
Right. We don't, just for clarification, we're not on Hazel's side.
No.
Hayes is not a fan. We're not a fan of Hayes. No.
Clearly.
So Christopher was struggling with his relationship with his father. He was grounded a lot because of his grades. And then, of course, his biological mother abandons him for the 2nd time. In a later 48-hour interview that Christopher did, he claims that his father was physically abusive as well at this time in his life, something that his father actually adamantly denies still to this day.
Well, I don't know many people who come forward having not gone through some type of a court proceeding and go, oh, yeah, I was totally abusive to my children years ago.
Well, Dad was never in a court proceeding.
Right.
His kid was. But yes, after what Christopher
But
ends
what
up
I meant
doing,
was absent dad having been through the court system for having been abusive, where you
Yeah.
really can't deny that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you've never been through it and then your children come back later and say, yeah, my dad abused me terribly, you know, in my youth.
He's
I
like,
don't.
yeah, I remember beating the
Oh,
shit
yeah.
out of you.
I don't know many
when you were
people who
12.
say, right.
well, and also I
They
think
say things like he was a difficult child.
Right.
She didn't listen.
Sure. And I think that another reason, another motivation for why Dad would adamantly deny it is because I don't think that he wants any sort of blame for what Christopher ends up doing at a very young age either. Even though we cannot take away this kid's childhood, or we can't separate it from what he ends up doing and not say that there's potential for correlation here, right?
It has to be
But
the
it's
perfect
not
storm.
causation.
No, it's the
just
perfect storm.
correlation.
Like we've said before, people can be in the same situation and go on and become amazing people
Yep.
who don't go and commit horrific crimes, but with the right recipe,
Yep.
depending on the mental health
Mhm.
and the other things happening, this could happen
Yeah.
instead.
And we have an interesting twist in this case, too. So, in referring back to an article on ChristopherPittman.org, within days of his mother's 2nd abandonment, Christopher took $70 and a backpack and ran away. The day before he ran away, he did ask his sister which way was north, because he knew that Chester, South Carolina, where Nana and Pop lived, 500 miles away, was north. Because remember, they're in Florida. They moved to South Carolina.
Yep.
So That's just where he's trying to get to. He's trying to get to Nana and Pop.
Christopher, in Florida, if you go the wrong direction, you're going to run into water.
Water? Yep, sure are. If you don't go north, you're headed into water, friend.
Absolutely.
So he leaves at 11 p.m. on October 23rd, 2001, and he was found the next morning in an Arby's just 15 miles away. Soon after being returned to his father, Christopher grabbed a knife and threatened to kill himself in front of his older sister, Danielle, claiming, quote, "I would rather die than live in this house with you and Dad," end quote. He wanted to live with Nana and Pop Pop. At that time, he was committed to Lifestream Behavioral Center in Leesburg, Florida, for a few days. Let's try that again. Doctors diagnosed him as clinically depressed and put him on Paxil, an antidepressant that was widely used to treat depression in adults and not approved for people under 18. This is still October 2001.
I'm already impressed that not that it was good, but that they gave him a diagnosis, because we all know how hard it is with juveniles under 18 to get any type of a diagnosis. And the only reason he would have been in any type of a hospital at that point in time is because there had to have been active suicidal ideation with a plan.
Well, I mean, and he grabbed that knife.
Yeah, it was more
himself.
of an attempt than an ideation.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
After the suicide attempt, his dad gave in and allowed him to live with his grandparents in Chester, South Carolina. This happened in November 2001 after he was released from the hospital, the behavioral center. Now, Christopher Pittman is 12 years old. He is 5'2" and 96 pounds, which is exactly why I always say that I'm built like a 12-year-old boy.
He's Anne Marie size.
Yes. He is exactly my size. Oh, I've got him by 2 pounds, but it's mostly in my ass, I think.
You're such a jerk, man.
But truly, he's a 12-year-old petite boy. As a child, built like a child, and taking medication not approved for children. Remember that. Upon moving to Chester, South Carolina, his grandparents enrolled him in the local school district, established him with a doctor, basically doing all the normal things. However, the doctor changed Christopher's antidepressant medication to Zoloft, which was also not approved for the use of children. This seemingly small decision leads to one of the most controversial trials of South Carolina history. On November 28th, Christopher Pittman had a difficult day. This is still 2001. He had been in trouble on the school bus for attempting to harm a much younger child. Some reports said that he was choking an 8-year-old child. Others just laid claim that he was fighting with another child. You know, when I find conflicting evidence or information, I like to share both with you. It doesn't matter. I'm sure it does. He was being violent one way or another with a much younger child, and he was in trouble with Nana and Pop Pop. That same evening, the family went to church. It was a Wednesday. They were the Wednesday worshipers.
Wednesday worshipers.
I'm trying to figure out what that would be.
Made up. Oh, there's
Seventh-day Adventists.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of religions that
Baptist.
do it.
Yeah, when I went to school, Awana was on Wednesday nights. That wasn't something I engaged in. It is not. It's a Jesus show. Oh. They go, it's just Bible study and extra
Jesus
worship.
is the star
I don't remember
of that
that
show.
one.
He is. He's
Because
been
MacGyver was on Mondays, I think.
I don't know. I was a church on Sunday morning kind of Protestant.
Right,
so.
right.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just the Wednesday worshiper thing wasn't in my notes. I just happened to say it and then realized that it sounded a little.
I'm going to interject too right now with Nana and Pop Pop. All I keep thinking is, they've dealt with this child through their entire life.
Yes.
Now he's experiencing some difficulties. But if you think about the age that they are and how they were raised, when a child starts misbehaving, even though there's mental health, they don't necessarily always understand the gravity of that. And instead, they're old school and they're like, you need to get your shit together.
God, they were probably younger than us.
Go to church, get your shit together. I doubt it. You think? Well, if
Nana and Pop Pop, if they had a kid when he was
16 and 17,
they were probably
shit. Jason, I don't want to think about that.
Let's just say they might have been like 36 when they had a grandkid.
They retired.
Now
they
he's
built
12 years older.
Home.
They may be 48 or 50.
Their retirement age, though. Remember, they built their retirement home. Ironically, they lived in Florida and retired out of Florida to South Carolina.
Right, because if you live in Florida and grow up, that's not retiring to you. That's hell.
It is, yes. And so,
so he's in trouble.
He is. He's in trouble. And then he goes to school. And remember, this is all happening very fast. It was in October when he had that suicide attempt and was placed in the mental health facility, the behavioral center, and then got to move with Nana and Pop Pop in November. We're not healed here. There's not been, he's placed on Zoloft and was originally placed on that other antidepressant, but we're still in the throes of transition here. And when he's at church that Wednesday, he starts kicking the back of the piano bench when the pianist was trying to play. So Nana and Pop Pop,
Little shit.
yeah, they left church.
Dick over.
Wow. See, that thing, it had a big thump. That is the biggest crystal. It really is. But anyway, Nana and Pop Pop, they leave church early because of Chris's behavior. Okay.
It's bad.
So
to
you
have to
know-
leave church because your kid's acting up.
Yep.
Because churches are pretty tolerant to the behaviors of children. They want
Yes.
kids there.
Yes. Later, the pastor would tell 48 Hours that he knew Christopher as he had visited his grandparents frequently, and he was a well-mannered, gregarious, and shy child. But once you got to know him, you saw his fun-loving side. The pastor said that when Christopher came to live with Mr. and Mrs. Pittman in November 2001, he was not the same child that he once knew. Of course not. He'd been abandoned again by his mother.
And every other mother figure, his dad having been through 3 divorces.
Yes, that's complicated as well. Having to leave the church service early on the evening of November 28th, 2001 is a prime example of what the pastor was referring to. Never before had they seen that type of behavior out of Chris. Once Christopher and Nana and Pop Pop returned home, Christopher was disciplined by spanking for his behavior, as you were alluding to before. Their
How old's
generation.
How old is
Spare
he?
the rod,
12.
right? He's
That's
12.
a little old to spank a
Yeah.
child.
For sure.
For those of you who do corporal punishment, which is legal, 12 is a little awkward to spank a child. Mine is 11 out here, and I can't imagine giving her a spanking.
No, not
I
at
can
all.
imagine grabbing her beautiful little face just like this and saying, "Can you please put your phone down?
Yes. Will you listen to me while I'm
Right.
talking to you?
Can you take your earphones off?"
So this 4 hours later after this spanking, their home was on fire.
Oh.
Like literally?
Oh.
Actually on fire. A 48-hour episode called Prescription for Murder reported that on the night of November 28th, 2001, Christopher Pittman left his bed in the home that he shared with his Nana and Pop Pop, the place he had just weeks earlier been running away to, and grabbed Pop Pop's .410 shotgun, the very same gun that Pop Pop had given Christopher's own father on his 10th birthday. And the gun that just that Thanksgiving, so only days earlier, because this is November 28th, Joe Jr., Christopher's dad, had actually gifted to Christopher. So Christopher's dad had received on his own 10th birthday this .410 shotgun, and on Thanksgiving that year, his dad gave it to Christopher. Now I'm going to have some judgment for giving a .410 shotgun to a child that just a month earlier had a suicide attempt.
Yeah, that's not
This
good
is-
parenting.
I can't-
Even for people from Alabama, I'm sorry.
That is
No.
that no.
I'm gonna
That
have
is
to edit that out.
that is no. That is no. I think by that we can justify it as we know that individuals in the South like their arms,
Right.
They do, sure.
and also people like us up here. We are armed people.
Yeah.
We like that.
I would have said the same thing if they were from Michigan. Like,
Yeah.
The
it's
southern
just
end of
not-
the county, especially.
Right. Like, but no, that agreed. A 12-year-old giving a 12-year-old a gun.
Who's
Giving
had-
a 12-year-old who's had issues and was psychiatric assessed and suicidal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's bad parenting.
Yes.
It is terrible parenting. Like almost grounds for removal, if not investigation for sure.
That's
Parenting.
very poor decisions.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. An article from ChristopherPittman.org stated that the gun was loaded with birdshot. If just for listeners, if you don't know what that is, it means that the bullets scramble, making it easier to hit a moving target like a bird in flight.
It's the Jackson Pollock of all ammo.
Sure
Yeah.
is.
So you can splatter paint it.
It's BBs.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
BBs,
but they
yeah.
But
spread. They splatter.
Yeah, they
Yep.
can.
It's not
yeah.
just one bullet that exits the gun.
Google it.
Christopher walked into his grandparents' bedroom while they were sleeping in the dark. He stood at close range and he fired the first shot into Joe Frank Pittman's open mouth, then fired a second shot into the back of Joy Pittman's head. There were 4 shots total fired, and Nana and Pop Pop, of course, did not survive. Next, Christopher took candles from the upstairs medicine cabinet and surrounded the candles with gasoline from the four-wheelers that he used to enjoy with Pop Pop, and papers. That's where he got the gasoline. The gasoline was intended for the four-wheelers. I wrote that sentence kind of wonky, sorry. So he lit the candles so that it would burn slowly and he'd have plenty of time to get away. He put an arsenal of his grandfather's guns in the couple's black Nissan Pathfinder, along with money and the family's golden retriever, Christy. And he drove away, leaving the two people his family would later claim that he loved the most in the world to burn.
He clearly did.
Yeah, I mean, he was running away. A month earlier, he was running away to their house. And now
he's murdered them.
And
he took the dog.
He did. He took Christy. Yep. Well, the dog didn't discipline him, I guess. The 911 call came in that Joe and Joy Pittman's house was ablaze. When the fire was out and they recovered only 2 bodies, it was very obvious that the fire had not caused their deaths. Police started to look for Christopher Pittman for the second time in just a matter of weeks, because remember, he ran away and was found 15 miles away at a Arby's. So here this 12-year-old is driving a vehicle, which is actually something he was allowed to do up and down Nana and Pop Pop's long driveway for fun, and it gave him a lot of practice. He made it about 40 miles before getting stuck in the Nissan Pathfinder. On October 29th, around 10 a.m., 2 hunters named Rollington Pennington. And
wow.
I know.
That's a name.
I actually didn't mean to say Rollington.
Roland Pennington?
His name is Rolling Pennington.
There were so many ingtings there.
It's a lot. Like there when you see it, write it out, you guys, because it's kind of
Pennington.
Rolling Pennington.
I would have liked it better if it was
Rollington Pennington. Yeah. Rolling Pennington and Taylor Robinson found the Pathfinder stuck with the 12-year-old boy inside. If you think about the timeline here and the fact that he only made it 40 miles, I believe he must have pulled off to sleep at some point, or possibly that's just when he stopped and got stuck. But the dog was nearby when the hunters found him, so it's possible that he'd actually stopped to sleep and then at some point wanted to get started again and then got stuck when he stopped to let the dog go out to go potty. Christopher Pittman told the hunters, I hate this, that a 6'2" black man had killed his grandparents and kidnapped him and left him there.
That's just evidence of how he was raised.
I know, that's what I was going to say too. They felt that he was acting very strangely because he did not act like someone who had just went through all that. He showed no emotions at all. Plus, there was no man in sight, and the vehicle had a lot of guns and money inside, and plus the boy's dog. Most kidnappers would not have taken the dog, so they called the police. The story Chris told was so detailed that the police initially believed him, but were suspicious.
I think you're going to be suspicious the entire time. I don't know that they necessarily believe them so much as they documented his story, and then we're going to test it.
I hope so. He was cool and calm the entire afternoon. By 5 p.m. that evening, he started to unravel and confessed to a police investigator, Lucinda McKellar. She goes by Lucy. He also said that he was not sorry and that they had deserved it. He never appeared manic during the interview. He did not appear to be having a psychotic episode at all, and never said that he was hearing voices or anything of that nature. He was asked if he loved his grandparents, and he replied, "Sometimes I love them, sometimes I hate them." And when asked if they deserved what happened to them, Christopher replied that he was not sorry and that they had it coming. Keep in mind, this is almost 24 hours later. Now, here they are with a 12-year-old child, 2 dead bodies and a confession, but what to do with that? This would be South Carolina's youngest murderer and youngest person to be tried as an adult. Because of the legal difficulties surrounding his age, Christopher was placed in a juvenile facility, a place where he would stay for 3 years while evaluations were completed and a trial was being set.
3 years is kind of long.
Yeah, that's what I thought. The judge that was going to be overseeing the case had agreed to let Christopher out on a $175,000 bond as the trial approached, but he had to stay in South Carolina, and all his family lives in Florida. So Grandma Dell and Great-Grandma Ruth, Dell's mother...
He doesn't have a good track record with grandparents.
Not at all. But
right.
they moved. They moved from Florida. They rented an apartment, and they waited for Chris to actually be released. They uprooted their lives, Grandma Dell and Great Grandma Ruth, for him. On Monday,
well, that's love, but I'm not. I don't know how I feel about the potential for granting any type of a bond in that situation.
Yeah. And then letting him live with grandparents when he had just murdered a set of them.
Unless
Grandma Dell's like, I don't know why she would jump on that grenade and be like, no, I'll do it.
I hope that the piece that we're missing is that there was some type of a recidivism in psychologicals that was indicating that he was stable enough that he was unlikely to reoffend.
It had been years. They didn't release him right away.
Yeah, it's 3 years.
It was 3 years
but he can be charged as an adult for murder. He was old enough to have been charged as an adult.
As a 12-year-old?
Yeah, well, it's an automatic waiver case at a certain age, and then after that, it's it's still a waiver case, but you have to have a hearing in front of the judge where they allow the person to be charged as an adult. But yes, you could be charged at 12 with homicide as an adult. It depends on the state and what their waiver rules are.
I have questions about these assessments that he had prior to the murder.
They're not usually admissible in court.
But did somebody just miss something here? And he was a little more than just depressed, obviously.
Well, they diagnosed him as didn't I say manic depressed?
Yeah.
What my notes?
Bipolar. No, you said like a major depressive disorder.
Yeah, it was. Mm-hmm.
But with major depressive disorder, I mean, you can have a psychotic break in there. And what you usually do when you're hospitalized is they either have to be a danger to themselves or others. And I have seen more than one mental petition where it's indicated a person is homicidal, but then they're no longer homicidal after treatment.
You got to remember, he was medicated. That's considered treatment. They considered having him, and Nana and Pop Pop had set him up with a psychiatrist. It just services hadn't been able to be done yet. But the guy saw him and changed him from the one medication to Zoloft. So for all intents and purposes here, he's being treated and is seeing a professional. He's just not in treatment like an inpatient.
It just seems like a very obvious, drastic increase.
Extreme. He had not tried harming anybody else to this point. And
other than an 8-year-old boy that he got in a fight with on a bus.
He did, which was possibly trying to choke him. Not sure if that's legitimate, but it was a fight. Yep. But had at no point in time had a history of harming an adult at all. No, this was a very quick snap. And in Grandma...
Which unpopular opinion is probably going to be, but I know it would have been argued that those adult prescribed medications that hadn't been appropriately tested on juveniles could have led to this.
Yes.
Zoloft can actually lead... It is used to treat social anxiety type of issues. It can cause suicidal issues. Mm-hmm. So can Prozac. I mean, these are both meds that he was prescribed.
This comes into play in the trial. It's a very important piece.
Because any good defense attorney is going to argue that but for him taking those medications that were not tested nor intended for minors, he wouldn't have responded in that manner. Because before, he was only trying to hurt himself and fighting with other children.
Yep.
And this was...
a dramatic escalation.
Way beyond that.
A month
murdering
after
2 people
you
care about in their sleep and burning down the house.
Yep.
There's no middle ground there.
There isn't.
No, there was no slow progression. It went right from 0 to 60. On Monday, January 31st, 2005, 3 years after the murders, the trial as an adult began for Christopher. Grandma said that she wasn't worried at all. And actually 4 days into the trial is when he was released on bail for the first time in 3 years. So Grandma, that's when he went with Grandma Dell and Great Grandma Ruth. And she expressed to the press that she wasn't worried at all and had no fear of Christopher. So Christopher is given a court-appointed guardian named Milton Hamilton. The guardian's job is just what it sounds like, to be the guardian for the counsel of the minor and have the best interest of the child in every decision that's made. This becomes very relevant information in just a minute. Now, Christopher's defense attorney, Andy Vickery, a well-known defense attorney that takes on big pharma cases, especially if there is big money involved. Vickery's defense Vickery's defense for Christopher was that he did not commit murder. He was under the influence of the Zoloft, which was not suitable for a 12-year-old to be taking, and that Zoloft was what drove Christopher to commit the murders. He said that although this is not the case for a majority of users, Christopher belonged to a very small, vulnerable subpopulation that the side effects had caused him to become violent. The prosecution does not believe that Zoloft had no effect. He knew the difference between right and wrong and knew exactly what he was doing. He was not remorseful as evidence from his statement to the police, and he simply did not like being disciplined. So that's what the prosecution's coming at this case with.
I'm a former prosecutor, and I don't love that because kids don't commit murder because they don't like the discipline. There's got to be something else going on.
Yeah. And not only that, yes, he knew the difference between right and wrong. He wasn't remorseful. The other thing, can we acknowledge that the whole purpose of Zoloft is to help reduce how much you feel so that you can slowly cope with your feelings?
The numbing of the emotions.
And I've seen, Jason and I have had discussions at length off air while at work about conversation or about things like this. We have seen children that are too heavily medicated that act like zombies.
Yes.
They can't feel anything. They can't express anything. They are barely conscious.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't surprise me if he had too high of a dosage of Zoloft that was inappropriate for his size and age, obviously, that he wouldn't be able to feel remorseful because he can't feel anything.
But once he was incarcerated, was there ever a period of time where he showed remorse?
I am unsure.
When they continue his like a prescribed medication, he would keep taking it, right?
Absolutely.
So
he would be reassessed. Mm-hmm. And they would...
several times. That's what took so long.
They would determine an appropriate course of medication for him.
But likely he was still prescribed some sort of antidepressant 100%. That he had been taking that was probably not appropriate.
Or he was completely misdiagnosed as having a major depressive disorder, and instead he had some type of a antisocial personality psychotic disorder. And it's really hard to diagnose. We're not doctors, but it's really hard to diagnose kids with being like schizophrenic or with having multiple personalities. You can't really do that until you reach a certain level. Or some type of a schizoaffective disorder. I shouldn't say multiple personalities. That's not the appropriate term anymore.
Right. It's dissociative identity now. But
for our current topic conversation, if the medication was altering his mood
which is supposed to.
Right. And then if they continued to give it to him, he wouldn't all of a sudden show some remorse when he didn't before if he's still on these.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I got you.
Right, yep. But the other problem too is, and I guess we need the experts, but if you're giving somebody a mood stabilizer, but you actually have a psychotic disorder, there's a difference between mood stabilizers and antipsychotics, and potentially he needed a combination of both.
Yep.
So I don't know how much you're going to get out of me in terms of how I feel about it, other than I don't know that I have enough information in terms of how he was treated in the interim in those 3 years, and I think maybe. If something important came up, it would have come up at the trial.
Yeah. Well, and I know
by the defense.
And this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I know the reason why it took so long for the trial is because he was undergoing so many different types of examinations and things like that to even build the case and do the trial. And so the prosecution's, stance is simply that Zoloft had no effect, and he knows the difference. He's just a murderer. And they do concede to the fact that he had an abusive and chaotic childhood, and so that's what led to him murdering, not the Zoloft. And after the killings, he lit the house on fire and made up a story about being kidnapped. So he is rational enough to come up with that, which is not the behavior of someone who's being controlled by a medication, in the prosecution's opinion. Okay.
And I don't necessarily disagree with that statement, because just his actions are showing this just level of
pre-planning, right?
It's the premeditation piece. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They also said, he used candles and stacks of paper to burn slowly so that he could have time to get what he needed to escape. Yes. It was methodical and planned.
Well, he clearly was no longer suicidal.
Yep. He stole weapons and money. So this, according to the prosecution, is not done by someone who's having an episode due to the side effect of a medication.
I don't disagree with that.
I think that it is relevant to point out that although antidepressants do linger in your system and you do have to be weaned off from them, you shouldn't stop taking them cold turkey.
Never.
The reverse is also true, and it can take weeks before they fully take effect. This is November 28th, so he had only been taking the Zoloft a short time because a month earlier he was still in Florida and had just started the Paxil. So you also have to take them at the same time every day, just like old school birth control, in order for them to work effectively. So at the time of questioning, when he likely had not taken Zoloft in over 24 hours, when he said that he was not sorry and that they had it coming, there's that to be taken into effect too, of how much was the Zoloft really still in his system as well. What effects are being are happening from
Zoloft isn't in control of the what's in your brain though.
No.
It might control what's socially acceptable to come out of your mouth, but that thought was in his brain regardless.
It was.
And he said it.
Yep. So the investigators, it was of their opinion that this was a meticulous and cold crime, especially because of the way the family kept saying that he loved them most in the world. Now, Chris's father insists that Chris is innocent, that Zoloft killed them. It's been on the market since the 1990s, and it is prescribed more than 30 million times a year. Delnora Dupree, the grandma Del, does not believe that he is guilty. Del helped raise Chris after her own daughter abandoned him. He then moved in with his father, who remarried, as you guys know. And so Del said that he was sad. He was a sad little boy, but he was never angry or violent. That's how she described him. So that says to me that Del noticed the profound effect that his childhood was having on him at the time that it was going on. The father, constant relocation, the dad being up and down with relationships, and mom abandoning, And sometimes I just want to say, sometimes sad can turn into angry and violent. And we can't discount puberty. Remember, he's 12. He's like prepubescent, about to transition into puberty. There's a lot of feelings happening, a lot of masculinity. There's a lot of things changing in his body and brain chemistry at this time.
Everything that we've just said could have been true of Charles Manson. Or Jeffrey Dahmer. Clearly with Jeffrey Dahmer, who had some issues, as a teenager as well. Oh, yeah. Sometimes people are murderers because they're fucking murderers, and it doesn't matter how old they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you expected a different comment from me in terms of his childhood and his upbringing, but think of all of the children that I know who've been through similar situations or worse, who clearly have not harmed anybody.
No, I know.
Something didn't work with him. Something clicked in a bad way. Mm-hmm. And I think that some people are just destined to hurt other people or to commit these crimes. And that's why we have a podcast. That's why we investigate serial killers and cult members and other people who've been harmed as children, who also have co-occurring disorders. They have mental health issues. They have substance abuse issues. None of these things excuse homicide.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Every time we touch the mics, you can hear it in the audio.
I know. I'm sorry. I just did it.
So did Jason. No, just reminding everybody, keep your paws off the mics.
Well, I touched it as a way to mute the fact that I was having a verbal stroke. I couldn't get the word out.
I put down the penis and then grabbed the mic
instead.
And I took a picture of him holding that penis earlier.
Yes. Oh, Lord.
There you go, buddy.
Now, Sister Danielle said that he did seem manic, and his aunt did complain about the pills. Like, for example, that they made his skin crawl, and they made him feel like his body was on fire. So he was having some
negative reactions.
Yeah, exactly. Now, shortly into the trial, the judge called the defense and the prosecution into his chambers to discuss a plea deal of voluntary manslaughter with a sentence of 2 to 30 years.
It's a good plea deal.
Christopher's attorney, Vickery, immediately turns this down. Remember, he is known for going after Big Pharma. And notice that I said the defense and the prosecution were the only members in the chamber. What about his court guardian, Milton Hamilton? He wasn't there. Hamilton was never made aware by the defense attorney, which is his job to keep the guardian informed, that there was any talk of a plea deal.
The court should have made sure it was informed. He was there too, though.
Okay, thank you for adding that as well. So the child's guardian, Milton Hamilton, is not, the court-appointed guardian, is not there. And right away, Vickery's like, nope, we're not going for a plea deal.
Well, now
he wants to go after Big Pharma.
Right, but now you have an ineffective assistance of counsel claim because he clearly didn't have his client's best interest at heart, because he's waiting for him to be convicted of homicide, get a life sentence so he can sue Zoloft.
Yeah, yes. Now let's talk about what the defense presented during the trial. Parents and children started to come out of the woodwork at the time of their own experiences with antidepressants. Mm-hmm. Some were even parents who had children complete suicide after starting the drug.
Yes.
The FDA now requires a black box statement to be placed on drugs like this to say that it can increase suicidal thoughts and behavior in children and adolescents.
We've all heard it on the news.
Yes.
We've all heard it on the ads.
Dr. Richard Caput worked for the FDA for 14 years and once approved Zoloft for clinical trials. He no longer worked for them at this time, though. The meds drastically alter the chemical makeup of juveniles and can cause them to become violent and increase anger. Keep in mind, Vickery, the defense attorney, takes these cases on all the time, so he's well connected with people that are willing to testify against the drug. Dr. Lynette Atkins, a forensic psychologist, claims that Christopher Pittman was temporarily insane when he killed his grandparents due to the Zoloft. The side effects were intense, and he heard command hallucinations that ordered him to kill his grandparents. He had no control over killing his grandparents. Remember,
he's never brought up hallucinations.
He did not. In that initial police interview, when he confessed, he did not mention he was not experiencing that. He did not say that to the police. She attempted to explain away the fact that he had carefully planned and carried out his actions before and after the murders by saying that the period of time he was psychotic was very brief. So that is why his attempts at covering up his tracks with the fire and the story all made sense. Then she testified that being withdrawn and unemotional when found was another side effect of the medication. So that is why he appeared the way he did during questioning. Many of her colleagues were surprised that she would testify for the defense in this case, actually. She still worked in pharmaceuticals at this time. Prosecutors believe that his abusive childhood is relevant because his grandfather had paddled him for earlier behavior that day, and it was a trigger.
Spankings don't cause murder.
Yeah. According to an article in the Herald, there was a lot of evidence showing that he knew what he was doing. The psychiatrist who evaluated him just hours after the murder, Julian Sharman, testified for the prosecution and recalled that he blatantly stated his grandparents when asked if they deserved what happened to them. He responded with, "They asked for it." And when he asked if he loved his grandparents, he responded with, "I love them sometimes I hate them." Pfizer, who makes Zoloft, testified that there's no link to homicide. In all clinical trials, there were no cases where someone escalated to homicide. Chris did not testify. He was 15 at the time of the trial. He did do an interview with 48 hours before his sentencing. He had not been on antidepressants for 3 years. So there's the answer to that question, Jay. Huh. He believes it was the medicine. He claims that he was not aware that he was going to go and get the rifle when he laid in bed. He became overwhelmed with anger. He said it was intense and little things would set him up. He told investigators that he'd become angry because his grandfather had paddled him, but now 3 years later, he's claiming there was no discipline that he killed only because the voices in his head told him to. The voices were loud and just said to kill. He claimed he thought it was all a dream. He found peace within himself when the trial came, and then it all came back to him. Remember, he never talked about voices later on.
This is my that's bullshit face.
Yes. Now, remember the psychiatrist that testified for the defense claimed that there was an episode of command hallucinations, which to me feels coaxed by the defense to make these claims, as I think
especially since most people who talk about having auditory and specifically command hallucinations will also talk significantly about how they struggle with those conversations, and it takes quite a long time to follow them. So is this his first time he heard a voice in his head say, "Go kill your grandparents"?
Right. Oh, yes. Allegedly.
It's brought on very suddenly.
You and I both know there were no voices. No. So Christopher claimed that the thing he was most worried about during the trial was losing his family. And 2 days before his case goes to the jury, his father showed up. Chris says, "As I have gotten older, I realized that he's made a lot of mistakes that I could forgive him for because he did what he thought was right. He said his father hit him with a belt, sometimes bad enough to turn him black and blue. His father did not attend the trial, but did have his parents buried in Florida. He wants the murder weapon back because it holds special memories with him, the 410
that he gave his child to kill his grandparents with,
and that Pop had gave him when he was 10 years old. And then he gave his child the week before he murdered his parents with it. I don't know why.
That's weird as shit.
It's weird, but we release weapons after homicides to family members all the time.
Well, it's not the gun's fault. The gun is not
right.
What
we
also why would you?
We also forfeit weapons that were used in crimes, but you have to provide notice, and if they request to have it returned, it can be returned to them.
The explanation is concerning.
I agree
that it holds sentimental value.
Special memories.
Like, I want the gun that killed my parents.
Yeah.
I think he means it was the gun Pop gave him that then he gave his kid.
I think it's got a new label now.
It does, especially with
it's
how
not,
fast
it's not
it was.
that gun Pop gave me to shoot birds.
It's
this is the one that blew my dad's head off.
Method of death.
Right.
It is. And also, he'd only given it to his son the week before this happened. So
he could take some accountability for this.
Everyone's a little different.
Maybe they should start looking at.
Maybe he has. Maybe there's a significant guilt factor. There had to have been for any reasonable person.
Listen, Joe Pittman Jr. still adamantly denies being physically or emotionally abusive to his son.
He may not have been.
Christopher paints a very different picture, claiming that his father was physically abusive during his childhood, and that is why he wanted to live with his grandparents.
Do any of his siblings corroborate that?
I don't know. I am not sure. In the 48-hour episode, his dad told a reporter that he had made a paddle as a threat but never used it.
Oh, okay.
And his parents actually took it away from him. Why would Nana and Pop have to take that away if he wasn't actually using it? That's the question I want to ask, but okay. During the closing arguments, Barney Gass, that's a name for you, the prosecutor, used the 410 gun with mannequin heads in his closing arguments as a demonstration, even showing them how close he had to be, and painted the whole picture for them. Christopher Pittman did look away during this time. On February 15th, 2005, after 7 hours of deliberation, Christopher Pittman was found guilty of murder. Vickery was pissed because he could have taken a plea, remember?
Yep.
The jury issued Chris the most lenient sentence allowed for a guilty murder verdict, which was 30 years. Now, remember what I said earlier about Milton Hamilton being the Pittman's court-appointed guardian ad litem?
Yes.
And he was never made aware of the meeting of the judges' chambers. In 2010, Christopher was granted a new trial based on ineffective counsel, as you had suggested, because Hamilton testified that he would have 100% had Pittman take a plea deal if that had been brought to his attention, and he likely would have gotten 10 years instead of 30.
Agreed.
Or
less.
Yeah. So in December 2010, he enters into a plea deal of voluntary manslaughter, and his sentence is reduced to 25 years with time served. While incarcerated, Christopher Pittman became Kristen Pittman, and on February 1st, 2023, was released.
At what point in time did gender identity issues come up here?
While he was incarcerated. Because keep in mind, when he was released February 1st, 2023, he had spent 22 of his 34 years on this earth in prison.
Well, that brings up a whole different issue in terms of what type of other things was he struggling with, and what conversations were being had, and was he being treated for any of that, or is this truly just a completely new event that happened in prison and never came up before?
It did not come up during his first trial, but this is why I mentioned the age at which all of this started to happen. He's hitting puberty. And I mean, I guess now at this point we should be saying she, because she identifies as a female now and is released, served her time. And yes, I think it's all relevant. I don't think it's Zoloft's fault. I'm not an expert here. Could have potentially played a part, but it's something to, the fault lies with the person who pulled the trigger.
I just don't think there was enough evidence given, even with all of those experts, that the medication was the cause for this.
Yes.
This kid clearly has had some other type of confusion, including gender confusion, along with mental health issues as well. All of those are DSM diagnoses. Mm-hmm. And putting those all together, I mean, that causes me more concern than him having been on a changed medication for roughly 3 weeks.
So I'm going to throw this out here and be as delicate as I can. And if need be, edited. But this gender identity issue, which clearly apparently didn't occur until after he was incarcerated, based on this personality and physical description, he didn't do well in prison. So there was probably some sexual abuse in prison for this kid.
Possibly.
Well, he spent 3 years in a juvenile
Detention.
facility. Yep. Which would have taken him at 15 is when he went to prison. Yeah.
So he was a petite young man.
Mm-hmm.
So he.
Yeah, I don't know what now.
But we don't.
So,
but
I don't know, and I'm not an expert.
Well,
on,
they haven't made any allegations that they were sexually abused in
Not in
lockup
childhood. No.
not
or
Oh.
in childhood.
I don't know. I didn't.
They just
look.
had a reassignment surgery while they were incarcerated.
I don't know if she had the surgery. All I know is that while incarcerated, that he went from
became
Christopher to Kristen. Yep. So she's
well,
Kristen.
you know what? Maybe it doesn't mean anything. I mean, if those, I find it hard to believe that those thoughts or issues weren't present at the time that the crime was committed, because it just usually that stems back to a pretty early age. So I find you just shocked me, caught me off guard that this is something that came up later.
Yes.
Because I feel like any defense attorney who, and this isn't me being rude to the defense profession with them jumping on the whole pharma thing. That's a real thing, okay? And they're going to come up with any defense they can possibly find. So I find it really hard to believe that if they had any knowledge that there was gender identity issues or abuse, that they wouldn't have brought that up and used it to their advantage.
Maybe, but this was also early 2000s.
Right.
This was way before we started having any of those conversations as acceptable.
What's the relevance of his gender to the crime?
None.
Okay.
None in terms of the, no.
Okay.
I was just thinking that coupled with mental health issues, coupled with prescription medication not intended for kids, and did they even know that there were these other issues? It's like almost a perfect storm.
Right.
Yeah.
In this child's brain.
And as as they had said, laying in bed and just getting angrier and angrier, and all of the body changes that are happening, the chemistry that's going on, and now in light of that information, I think it all plays a part in the storm that, like you were saying, this perfect storm that just resulted in this terrible tragedy. But I couldn't find that there was any like real remorse here. I think that the remorse got lost in all of the blaming. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just as a very
When you're
interesting case.
and when you're talking about that part with the lack of remorse and that really never taking accountability and trying to blame it on something else, you get this feeling that there's this level of narcissism as well in terms of that mental illness, where this is just a completely self-centered human which is normal for preteens and teens to be self-centered, right? Because they're learning about the ego and stuff in terms of their psychological development. But did they grow out of it?
Right. I don't know. I don't know. Are you guys ready for a brain bath?
Faith us.
So Megan.
Well, hold on.
What?
Happened to Christine?
She moved away. Goes by Kristen. Yep, Kristen Pittman. Trying to live a quiet life. Yep. Don't know. I mean, at this point, been out almost 2 years. Yep. So that is all I know.
Also,
the first time I recorded this episode in 2001.
They were still incarcerated.
She was still incarcerated.
And I have a question for Megan with the sentencing. When they did it, so he got sentenced to 30 years, which was apparently the minimum.
Yes.
And then he got the retrial. She got the retrial because of the
ineffective assistance of counsel.
Thank you.
You get
how did he go from, because the original plea was like for 10 years, right?
The original plea was anywhere from between 5 and 30 years.
Okay.
And then,
I was just wondering how
they settled on 25.
They only managed to knock 5 years off a sentence because of that.
It's up because basically
it
at that point,
doesn't seem like a big discount to me.
Usually a judge here does sentencings, but some places it's juries that do them. So if he accepted, and I don't know what theirs is, so assuming it was a judge, if they accepted a plea to, Kristen accepted a plea to voluntary manslaughter, which carries no more than 30 years. And she's already served, what'd you say, 15 years of it? 10?
Well, the
I think it was
sentence was 25 with time served.
Okay. So
In 2010, because it would have been the trial started early 2005.
yeah, so they'll take into consideration their behavior, how things have gone since then, risks of
I'm
recidivism.
sorry, I forgot to say that. The resentencing was determined on good behavior.
Good time. Okay.
Yep.
So that's
so
why
how
there
much
was a
time
reduction.
did Kristen?
Kristen.
Sorry. How much time did Kristen serve?
From, being arrested in 2001 and then released in 2023, but the sentencing took place in 2005 and was released in 2000.
But they served
So
20
7
years.
or 18 years, 20
Yeah,
years.
close enough. I mean, and again, I think
Good also, there was nothing but
Right.
good behavior
Oh,
that happened.
right, and with a voluntary manslaughter conviction, you can be reassessed yearly, and parole can happen before you've served the entire amount of time.
Yep.
So yeah, good question though.
Yeah.
Now I'm ready for you to bathe us.
Now are we ready for a brain bath?
What are you reading to us
Bathe
from?
us.
Well,
her favorite book.
my favorite book that
This
I got
is
for
glorious.
Christmas.
So I came in, I'm a fan, so I've listened to the last 3 posted
You mean
episodes.
all of the episodes we had to do without you.
But I must have missed the first one where you recorded this, because the last one I listened to, you were like, okay, yay, ready for more dumb criminals, and I'm like, I haven't heard the first one yet. Did
you not listen in order?
No, I listened in reverse order, and I'm to Corpse Bride now. I just listened backwards.
Oh, that's why Corpse
Corpse
Bride
Bride?
is the first
Okay,
one. Yeah,
all right.
I loved the Corpse Bride.
I'm
was a
only
good- that was a
no,
good
don't.
one.
I'm only 15 minutes into Corpse Bride.
Did you? By the way, you guys, since this is a general audience episode, you guys should know Jason and I released an hour-and-a-half long bonus
really that
episode.
long?
It was
Yes.
bonus episode on Typhoid Mary,
It was so good.
the real
I
Typhoid
loved it.
Mary case.
I loved it. I listened to it cooking dinner on Friday night.
Yes, it was a fun case to research and
You
to
guys
record.
did a great job. I enjoyed it.
And if you guys don't know, our Patreons, our $10 a month Patreons, that's our highest tier level that we have. We try
Worth
to stay.
it.
We try to stay so accessible to people. It's $10 a month. You can't even go to McDonald's and get a Big Mac for a meal for $10 a month
It's
anymore.
a fancy coffee,
And we don't give you
Yes.
diarrhea.
Yeah, not usually.
and I don't make you
That
fat
I,
either.
that I know of.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Not that anyone's wrote me and said, but you get 5 bonus
The way you
episodes.
speak loosens my bowels, Charnell.
If so, please let us know.
Listen, I love coffee and it loosens my bowels.
Right.
So
we know,
it
9 a.m. for both of you. I've heard. We know too much about each other.
This is why Jason and I could never live together.
Right.
Because we're on the same poop
Get
schedule.
out of the bathroom.
But that's
Have to
actually
shit.
called Seriously Stupid Criminals.
It is called
Yeah,
Seriously
it
Stupid
is.
Is
Criminals.
that Hagrid?
But hold on.
No, but it looks like him, doesn't it?
I'm not
It's a
done.
skinny Hagrid.
I'm not done telling people that they need to join Patreon.
Tell them
Yeah.
how. Tell them how.
Because
Subscribe.
go to patreon.com/crime curious or click on the link, because you guys, you get once a week general audience episodes from us. But if you're a $10 a month Patreon, you get 5 bonus episodes that are always like hours long. And we're looser. We are like loose bowels on those episodes.
Yes.
But in a good way.
We
not
are a
in the
spastic
diarrhea
colon
way.
on those.
We are.
I don't know if I should comment on the looser comment.
Don't say a fucking word. This is our general
And I'm
audience.
sorry that I looked right at you.
Thank you.
Oh, now I think it is time to bring in
I
seriously
hope your steak
stupid
roll
criminals.
chakra is so tight. So tight.
Oh my God.
All right, Seriously Stupid Criminals by Sinova Cantrell. Get this book. It's great. Although if you hang out long enough, I think I might read this whole thing to you. Here's a news article. $45,000 worth of lettuce stolen in Canada.
A lot of lettuce.
Let us remain calm.
Oh my God. That was ripe for an article.
It was. After a firestorm of salad-related puns on Twitter, the police must toss through a load
boy.
of clues to solve this case. My apologies. It's hard to
After
stop.
this, you're going to need a bib.
A truckload of lettuce was stolen in Hamilton, Ontario on March 31st. What year was this? It doesn't say the year. Apologies, because I don't know.
Well, the Great Lettuce Capers happened in the 30s.
It's Canada. They didn't like.
I think it was more recent than that, Megan.
Let's go steal some lettuce, eh?
They got sick of the poutine. They needed some roughage.
some-
Somebody worked your lettuce, eh?
Jesus. The culprits allegedly drove the truck to Toronto, ditched the truck, and hauled off with the trailer. They really didn't want the lettuce. They were just trying to get the trailer.
Oh.
The thieves are still at large at the time of this writing, but I hope that they'll turn up soon. What are they going to do with $45,000 worth of lettuce? Averaging the cost of lettuce in the writer's area, that would be approximately 30,000 heads of lettuce. They must be very dedicated vegetarians. No,
and also, lettuce is expensive in Canada because you can get a head of lettuce here for 50 cents.
Yeah. Well, probably not in today's inflation times. I haven't looked.
Listen, we're not
Where
talking
are you
eggs
buying
here.
lettuce?
Aldi.
I think it's like oh, that makes sense.
That weird farm down on 99.
Because Meyer has it for like $1.75 a
Tastes
head.
great after you wash all the cow shit off of it.
What?
Oh, Lord. And with that, you all, we really hope that you keep listening.
Keep it curious.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.